Hey everyone, welcome to Story Mantra, my favorite time of the day when I get to talk with authors, people in the publishing industry who make my lives a little more merry every minute. So, what have I been reading and why am I still not done with this book? Because it's my fault. This is What's Left Untold by Sherri Leimkuhler. It's a USA Today best-selling author's book. Can you see that little green banner? Can you hold your version up, Sherri? Ta-da! And if you don't want the Kindle version, because every time I flip open my Kindle, I find these little game apps that keep running. You get the paperback version. And of course, it is a fabulous read. And I kept looking at this cover for such a long time, like, why are there two women on the cover? And why is the background so misty dark? Well, when you read the story, you'll understand why. And this is something I loved about Sherri's book. The ambience in the book is full of Christmas music, wine, drinking, cookies, and I was thinking of food the whole time. I was getting hungry the whole time, which didn't help either. And there are these two adorable dogs, who keep stomping around the house, and you feel like you're in a home of love and affection. Very, very warm, comfortable feeling. But just like the mist in the background that you see here, there's so much going on beneath the surface of the story. Yeah. And that's what this whole story is about. It grips you from the page you start flipping because you think you're entering the lives of two best friends. There's a lot more. And the layers run deep. So thank you, first of all, Sherri, for writing that book.
Thanks for having me here today.
Yay. Oh, I forgot to welcome you. Sorry. That's how engrossed I get in the authors' lives and the books I read. I forget to introduce them. Welcome to Story Mantra, literally. So who is Sherri Leimkuhler? She is a USA Today bestselling author. She has written professionally for more than 20 years, but is a Jill of many trades. Listen to this. She's experienced in sales, marketing, public relations, event planning, aviation, and yoga instruction. Like, she wears all those hats and it doesn't matter. And then she has a health and fitness column for the fun of fit. I mean, come on, seriously. Here I am struggling to lose a pound and you just like, why not? She appeared bi-weekly in the Carroll County Times for a decade. A competitive triathlete and two-time Ironman finisher. I'm not even going to address that because that's just embarrassing for me to even read. Sherri also enjoys, this is a little more easier now on the flap, hiking, paddleboarding, trail running, traveling, and wine tasting. Maybe not so much. But she lives in Maryland with her husband, 3 daughters, and 2 Labrador retrievers. And her daughters are adorable. I've seen their photographs. They remind me of Sherri when she was perhaps younger because they all look like her and they're all as brilliant as she is.
Oh, you're so sweet.
Yeah, and her 2 Labrador dogs are
Bodhi and Luna.
And they are the cutest dogs I've ever seen. I even love them so much, I used some social media tactics on them. So I hope the dogs didn't take offense there. We had one of them wearing glasses reading Sherri's book. So what is What's Left Untold all about? It's about 2 girls. And I could read the book blurb for you. But there's so much to discuss with Sherri because there are so many deep levels that the story attaches itself to. It starts with friendship. A very innocent friendship between 2 girls, one who's had a very rough childhood and one who's trying to find herself, who is Anna. But what I realized when I started reading this book, Sherri, is, even though Anna's trying to find herself, it's really Leah, the one who's lost. And it's just so funny because you're seeing polar opposites, which is what we were talking about before the call. They're polar opposites. And as we get further in the story, there's a hidden letter that Anna discovers, which Leah wrote to her, which she did she read it or did she didn't read it? That's something that's why you have to read the book. Sorry about that. But that letter holds the clues to a lot of what starts to unravel and goes wrong. And of course, there's a 20-year high school reunion approaching and you see Anna's devastation in terms of, should I go? Shouldn't I go? There's this fear of going to a simple high school reunion, which you can understand. Why would it be such a traumatic situation? Except the fear is of meeting Leah. And so that was interesting. And then, of course, as layers of deceit and betrayal begin to unravel, Anna is forced to question everything she believes and come to terms with what it means to forgive the one person who hurt her in the worst way imaginable. So I'm guessing there's a very strong undertone of redemption here.
Yeah, definitely.
How did you come about with that topic of redemption?
Well, I think everybody deserves second chances. I think anybody who's made mistakes would hope for redemption and try to figure out how to find a better path and be a better person. And we all make choices in life that we're not proud of, that we regret, that maybe weren't the right thing to do. And we try to find the best way possible to move forward from that and to make better choices going ahead.
So that's one of the things I loved about Sherri's book. The characters are all shades of gray. There's no one who is, very specifically good, very specifically bad. Like I said, you read Leah's character and you start thinking, well, no wonder she's the way she is. But then as you get to the end, and I'm at the 90% mark. So Jennifer Clapper, I'm going to get there to the end of the book. You kind of begin to understand, well, this is the reason why people end up with the personalities they do, because they're shaped by what they've experienced in their lives before. Is that how you would describe Leah's character?
Oh, definitely. Definitely. Leah is a product of her environment, of her, I guess what's fair to say, her dysfunctional relationship with her mother, and trying to find love and seek love and give love and be independent. And especially within the constraints, the gender type of constraints uh, put on young people, especially in the 80s. I think we're trying to live in a more open society now about, in all different kinds of ways, about love and gender roles. But in the 80s, it was very stereotypical expectations, I think, for behavior for girls and boys. What was celebrated for one was, vilified for another. And
Yeah.
so that's definitely examined in this book a little bit. And Leah is rebelling against that. She's rebelling against some of those social norms and pressures that have put upon her so she can just be herself.
So what's Anna? What's her background, and how did she end up the way she is? You mentioned in last week's episode she's unsure of herself and she's trying to find herself. Why is she lost when in fact it's Leah who's more lost than she is? But they're two very different personalities.
Yeah. Anna comes from a tight-knit family of four. Her parents and brother were a very close family, and her father is a waterman. So she spent her childhood moving from one small fishing town to another. And so being a tomboy and moving so often, she really was not able to connect well with other girls her age. She'd rather be playing, tag or backyard ball instead of Barbies or easy bake oven. And occasionally she would try to forge a friendship. And on one or two of those occasions, she was betrayed by a friend. So she really became mistrustful of girls and female friendships. And by the time she's entering high school, her brother has gone off to college. They've moved to a new town. So she's the new girl once again, and really has no expectations of forming new friendships, just getting through high school and moving on. And she, on the very first day and very early in high school, bumps into Leah, who is just kind of rocks her world. She is opening, she's vivacious, she's outgoing, she's beautiful. She's everything that Anna feels like she's not. And best of all, she's just down to earth and welcomes Anna with open arms, which is something Anna has not experienced. So she does let her guard down, let this girl in as her best friend. And they both kind of need each other and fill the gaps in each other's lives. They are completely opposite, but because of that, they find great balance in their friendship.
So
But
this fabulous story you've written, and I'm sorry to interrupt you, but you just triggered a thought, which starts from friendship, goes to betrayal, and then goes to redemption, which I'm heading toward, by the way, everyone. I have my 10% left of the book. That's such a huge arc to cover for a character, and two characters, mind you, and two storylines. So I have to ask you about the rigor of your publishing journey, because I know from what we exchanged, you told me it took you 11 years to go from inspiration to publication.
that's right.
Tell me a little bit about that.
My background is in writing, but I didn't start out in my writing career thinking I would publish a novel. I did a lot of freelance writing. And as my kids were young and I kept writing from home, I started to think I'd like to write a book someday. I'd like to take this newspaper and column type of writing I do and actually develop it into a whole develop my writing into a full story.
Right.
So it had been stewing in the back of my mind for a couple years when in 2009, I was helping my parents move. I just hadn't had that thing. I hadn't had that light bulb about what to write about. People, authors get asked often get asked, how do they decide what they want to write about?
Yeah.
And I think stories come to us. Like I knew I wanted to write something, but I wasn't sure what I would write about. But in that moment in 2009, I was helping my parents move. And I found a trunk of childhood memorabilia that belonged to me. It had things in it going all the way back to elementary school, through junior high, high school, college. And as I was going through this trunk, there was a box of letters in there, along with leg warmers and yearbooks and all kinds of crazy things. But one of the letters had a postscript that caught my attention, and it said, I need to see you. I have something important to tell you.
So this
And
is real life.
this was real life. This was a real incident. And so I kind of laughed it off when I read that letter and folded it back up, put it away, and just chalked it up as high school drama. And then as I was driving home that night, it just started spinning in my mind, what if it had been important? What is something you could learn 20 years after the fact that could still have a major impact on your life? And from that little nugget of inspiration, the whole story started to unspool in my mind. And I had it written in my head to what I thought would be the ending. And then, as you mentioned, that the 10%, there is a little extra that developed in the course of writing. But after that initial inspiration in 2009, I wrote sporadically over 5 years. And you mentioned earlier about obstacles. I still had several jobs I was juggling. I had 3 young children at home. My husband and I were training. We were competitive triathletes at the time, and it just wasn't time in the day. Something had to give always, and it was the writing. So I spent 5 years kind of playing around with the manuscript. And it wasn't until 2014 that I said, okay, I want to get this done. I want to get serious about getting this book on paper and finished. And I did. I spent the next year devoting my effort to that. And in 2015, I became a member of the Women's Fiction Writers Association, and I entered my manuscript into the Rising Star contest.
Ooh.
And of the 75 entries, What's Left Untold was one of 5 finalists.
Oh, congratulations. And for all of you who are wondering about this organization, we'll put the link at the bottom below the video, where you'll also find Sherri's website links and the Amazon purchase link to her book.
Yeah, the Women's Fiction Writers Association is amazing. It's an amazing resource. And that opportunity I had was a turning point in this book, because finalists in the contest had the opportunity to have the manuscript reviewed by agents and publishers and receive feedback. And it was during that feedback process that the book went from chronological to flashback format. And when I decided to rewrite it that way, it took another year to revise the manuscript. The other big thing to come out of that process was full and complete understanding how subjective the writing world and the reading world is.
Yep.
And that as an author, I knew I would never be able to please everyone. So I decided to write the book that I wanted to write that would please me. And hopefully that would resonate with readers as well.
Well, since we're on the topic, let me just ask you. So you said the ending is very controversial.
It is.
You hate it or you love it, and you have to live with it. How were you able to deal with that situation, or did it not hit you when you were writing that ending, and did all that reaction come after, when readers reached out to you?
I got to the point in the book where I thought it would end, which is shocking, but not completely unexpected. Some readers have said, oh, I kind of figured out this was going to happen. And I think as an author, I felt a little bit that way too. I thought it was a good story, but it fell flat of my expectations in terms of what I wanted to write. I really enjoy books that take me by surprise, that push the envelopes, that push the boundaries, and maybe aren't always have the happy, tidy ending that is sometimes expected. Especially in women's fiction, I think that there are certain expectations. And I wanted to push the story a little further. I wanted to take the consequences of continued secrets to another level.
Which mirrors real life, because life does not have happy endings anyway. Not all the time. And sometimes we have an ending which leads to a new beginning because it's a new chapter we have to literally crack open and start over.
That's right. And so the characters they're human and they're flawed. And in the heat of the moment, they don't necessarily make the right choices that readers would view as the right choice. They don't necessarily make the choice you would make or I would make, or the choice we think we would make in that situation. They make a controversial choice. And that's what really turns the book upside down at the end. And people love that or hate that. There's very little in the middle. If you look through my reviews of this book, it's not a lot right in the middle. People love that this happens, or people are really upset by what happens. And without an epilogue, some readers don't get the closure they're looking for. But as far as sticking true to that, I have no regrets. My publisher was very supportive of the path my book went on and felt strongly that triggering any emotion in a reader, whether it was joy and happiness or sadness and anger, is better than indifference.
Right.
And I do think I achieved that. And during this very long process, I got to see a lot of other authors go through publishing their books and getting reviews that are hard to read. And so I was kind of prepared, especially with the way my book ends, to know that not everyone would like it. And as a result, some of the reviews would make me sad to read.
Right.
So I try to get a thick skin, and I try to follow the advice to just not read the reviews, because now the book is out there, and it's not my book anymore. It's a reader's book now.
Reader's book, exactly.
It's a reader's book now. Yeah.
And I guess that's something that we learn to live with, that this product that you've been developing, creating, putting together for so many years, when it's in the reader's hands, it's their book. They take away what they want from it in the same way I took away from your book what I wanted. And I'm still loving it. Like I said, from the surface, for all of you who are listening, on the surface of the story, it's a beautiful story of friendship. Two friends find each other from, absolute revenge on Leah's end and Anna's end. They come to a resolution point, and you think, okay, so things are going to be happy, sail smooth. And then, of course, things start taking a turn, because that letter and then more letters start coming out in terms of what's left untold. Literally, the title is perfect for it. And so it's just so beautiful the way how everything comes out, falls in place. And you see that, and this is my interpretation of the story, like you said, flawed characters make the right choices, make the wrong choices, and sometimes make choices unknowingly, literally in the dark, as was the case with, Leah's situation. But then what they do with that choice after, how they handle it, that really goes back to, I think any religion and any culture, which always gives you good mottos in life in terms of how do you handle the choice that you've been given.
Yeah.
And that's something that I got from Sherri's book. Everybody has their own take on it. So in the same way, Sherri, how did you take the choice and make the choice that you're not going to give up on this journey?
I just wanted to see it through to the end. I'm not someone who starts something and doesn't finish it. Once I decide I'm going to do something, I do it. I just sort of have that determined nature about me.
Like your triathlons?
Yes, exactly. There were a lot of times I wanted to quit on those. For sure. But as I said, that was a really validating experience for me with the Rising Star contest, and getting that feedback from the agents helped me turn this into the best possible version of this book. And so once it was done and rewritten in the flashback format, I did go out on submission. I went through all the paces like authors do of the rejections, the requests for fulls and partials. And while we're talking about this this book's been called a domestic noir. This little dark side that it has, I literally had some agents say they loved the story, they loved my writing, but they didn't think the ending would sit well necessarily with readers of women's fiction. And they weren't sure with me as a new author, an untested author, that they would be able to sell that book and push that book the way it ends. So it took me a while to find the right home in Red Adept Publishing for my book. But I did find the right place, and they really championed this story. And I signed with them in 2018, and the book was released in the middle of the pandemic last year in
And
May.
how did it hit the USA Today bestsellers list? Apart from the excellent writing and the characters and everything, but what's that journey been?
That was really a whirlwind journey for me, actually, and it didn't happen fast. It was the book came out in May of 2019, and it hit the USA Today list in February of 2020. So it was I like to think good things come to those who wait.
Yeah.
It was 9 months of having the book out there and doing the best to let people know about my book and connect with readers in this environment of the pandemic. We were all in for the first time and trying to figure out how to navigate. So what the USA Today is really a matter of getting this book in front of enough readers across multiple platforms. Readers are acquiring books from multiple sources, from Amazon, from Barnes and Noble, from bookstores, from from Apple, from anywhere, digital, hard copy. And I think it comes together in the USA Today that you've reached enough readers across all these platforms to make this list. And so it was very exciting, and it was fun to watch. That was a nerve-wracking day.
I know we were doing that 1 week promotion together when it hit, and I was just like, oh my God. It was so exciting.
Actually away I was celebrating my 25th anniversary with my husband when all this was going down. We always thought we'd be in Italy cycling the coast of the Amalfi Coast. And of course, no one was traveling yet anywhere. So we just were held up on a boat in the Key West. I didn't even always have reception or access to, the internet to see what was happening, as this was going down. So I had great support from writers, friends that were kind of keeping me posted on text and taking screenshots for me as the book was having that day. So it was crazy.
How did that feel to know that this product that you've been on this rigorous journey for is impacting women? And I don't mean to say that you're impacting their lives, but you're impacting their thought process, especially with such a controversial ending that everybody was so skeptical about. Yeah. How does that make you feel now to have reached this pinnacle?
It's amazing feeling, honestly. My goal going into this, as I mentioned, I wanted to write the book I wanted to write. And in doing so, I hoped I would write a book that readers would enjoy and connect with. And most of all, I wanted a book that would inspire amazing book club conversations. My favorite book clubs to go to are when we have people with feelings all across the board. Some people love it, some people hate it, or it's controversial, and so much conversation comes from that, and learning from each other and how we feel. So I wanted to write a book that would inspire discussion like that people be excited to talk about passionately, from whichever side of that spectrum they were coming from. So meeting with book clubs virtually at first, and now I've been able to more and more meet in person with people and discuss these feelings and thoughts readers are having, and talk about why the characters made these choices, and why as the author I chose to have the characters make these choices has been really rewarding and fulfilling, and probably one of the best things about this whole journey.
Wow. So can you share with me, and I'm going to just read you some reviews that we have, but could you tell me some feedback that you've received, which is really stuck, stuck in there, and like, it's just made you think, from your readers?
On the positive side, the readers that are like, I couldn't put this book down. I read it in a day. I haven't read a book in 6 months, and I picked this book up and I couldn't put it down. I loved it. I love the twists and turns, and that kind of positive feedback. This book isn't like other books that I'm reading, and I can't wait to talk about this in my book club. Though that's the amazing feedback I love. And then on the other end of the spectrum are the readers that are angry with the decision the characters have made, and say, as a mother, I don't understand how these characters could have made this choice, and how could they do that? I would never do that, which I love that statement, because again, I don't think we know what we'll do until we're in that situation, until our own feet are at the fire. And that it's so much more multidimensional than just seeing from afar somebody else's decision that they're having to make. So there's a lot of passion out there about this story and the way it unfolds.
So I'm going to go back to that aspect of the mother that you brought in, because I have a question about that too. But 2 reviews that I wanted to share with you about Sherri's book. And this is by Kara Sue Ackberg, national bestselling author of Girls Weekend and I'm Not Her. This is what she had to say. Leimkuhler's authentic prose puts you inside Anna's head and heart as she unravels the secrets of a childhood friendship that threatens not only her own mental health, but also her marriage and her daughter's happiness. What's Left Untold is a heartfelt and surprising examination of friendship, honesty, and whether love is love. Oh, well, that tells me there's more in the 10% left.
Uh-huh.
So, okay, and this one is by Sue Ann Schaefer, author of Hunting the Devil. What's Left Untold is women's fiction in the best sense, women's foibles and egos working both for and against them. I stayed up half the night reading the book, nearly one more chaptering myself to death. I can totally agree with that. Because I still got 10% to go and I'm going to finish it. But going back to the topic of mothers, there's a really riveting scene in there, and several of them in little snippets, like nuggets, when Anna looks at Catherine, her daughter, and there's a realization that, I used to be like that too. And I used to do that too. And yet the feeling now is so different. And you've got two storylines running. And so it wasn't too long ago when we actually saw Anna like that.
Right.
How did you manage that with just the being a mother and being a child and the transition between the two?
The interesting thing about writing this book and the 11-year journey it took me to do this is that I was writing about something I hadn't experienced yet. So I was taking a little bit from what my own mother had expressed and the difficulty of experiencing the empty nest of your children leaving home, and then that transition of them coming back to the house. So they're kind of baby adults. They're kind of been on their own, but not fully independent yet. Because my own children was just young when I started writing this book. And now that the book's out in the world, I have one daughter that's 2 years into college and one going away this fall.
Yeah.
So my kids now are the age that Anna's children were in the later part of this story. But this book goes through a lot of different key topics. It's secrets, betrayal, and loss, but also friendship, love, and forgiveness. Yeah. And some of the other main themes, like you touched on, are motherhood, infertility and miscarriage, empty nest, raising adult children at this point, and how you can still impact their lives or not, and how much they tell us about their lives or not.
Or not, exactly. I mean, and that's what I was feeling while I was reading this, like, wait, so I didn't know about this. What happened? And how did I miss this? And there's this really interesting sense of like Anna feels attached, but detached.
Yeah. Yeah. She knows that she wants so much to be a part of her daughter's life, but she knows her daughter is striking out on her own and desiring that independence that all young adults do. Mm-hmm. And so, there's a lot of friction between the two of them. So when some of these secrets start coming out, it's unclear to a lot of the characters whether the friction is because of the secret or the friction is, because Anna's resistance to face up to what's happening and be honest with her daughter and give that same honesty that she's asking for in return back to her daughter. So,
oh, that's going to be the last bit, which I have to read and catch up on. So, well, okay, let me ask you for this. I know we talked about not giving up. Let me ask you about a tip for our viewers in terms of growing a thick skin, and what you talked about, not taking readers' opinions to heart, being able to write the ending that you feel is right for your book without disappointing yourself as the author of the book.
Yeah, growing the thick skin is really important. And it's part of that understanding that once the book is released, it's the reader's book, and not everybody. There's nothing an author could do that would please everyone. There's absolutely nothing. And every person that reads the book, although they're reading the same book, they're actually reading a different book, because each reader brings their own sets of values and experiences to the story and interprets it through their own lens. And with this social media world that we live in now, the ability of anyone to go online and say or do anything without any face-to-face interaction. And as authors, we are not really able to engage with readers at the review point. Mm-hmm. So with book clubs, it's great to be able to have that opportunity to have the back and forth, because there's so many times a reader might leave something that they don't, a review talking about something they didn't understand or they didn't like. And it's so hard to not want to be able to say, but here's why, or here's what I was thinking, or here's why they do that. And you just don't have that opportunity. So it would be not being honest to say it doesn't hurt, because as you know, as an author too, we put our blood, sweat, and tears into this work, and we want people to like it and enjoy it, even though we know not everybody will feel that way. To see harsh words written is really hard to read, and not having any opportunity to defend against those words or engage with the person that put those words out there. The best advice is just to not read the reviews, because we're as authors, we're powerless in those situations. So and I couldn't do it. I had to read some in the beginning, and some of them were amazing to read and made me feel so good, and others not so much. But I do think that I learned, even from the negative reviews. I like to hear, as long as it's not maliciously negative,
Yeah.
there's some constructive opportunity there to learn what readers didn't like and why.
Sherry, what I'll tell you, and for everybody who's watching, I'll tell you this: as writers and as authors, storytelling is an emotional experience. We're driving at getting into the heart of your emotions. So Sherry, if people have reacted to this extreme over your ending, controversial ending, which could be controversial to somebody, as you said, it's subjective, but could be a justified ending to somebody else. The fact that you've managed to pique their emotions, to get them to write something on the page, to say something, I think that's your accolade right there.
Yes.
And I applaud you for it, because if you have taken the stand to literally hold ground to your story and what you believe in, which is probably one of the hardest things to do, um, it validates who you are and what you've done.
That's right.
So
Yeah, and like I said, and Red Adept Publishing has been an amazing champion of that, because they've sort of held my hand a little bit through this process. I remember having a conversation with my publisher, and she was like, "Now tell me again. Let's go through this again about this ending." And I was almost like timid to tell her, in case she was like, "Oh no, I didn't know that was gonna. I didn't remember that was gonna happen." And she was like, "So this happens, and this happens, and this happens." I love it. She's like, I love it. And she was so excited about it. And then when I was new and getting some of the, the less positive reviews, she was the one to come back to me with those words of wisdom, like, you made the readers feel something. It
yes,
doesn't always have to be joy and happiness. If you make them feel anger or sorrow or frustration, you have written a story that had them so invested in these characters and how they felt about it, that they have all this passion, which is way better than indifference or such disinterest that they wouldn't finish the book. And I don't think I've had, to be honest, I don't think I have read one review that said they did not finish the book. And that's something that makes me feel, really happy. So
well, you've made us all turn the page.
yeah.
Which is what we're all rooting for as writers. So you did what you needed to do. And so here's a question, maybe you can answer for all our viewers. What is a writing tip, and actually a life lesson tip you can give to budding writers or seasoned authors in growing a thicker skin?
Oh my, growing a thicker skin.
Yeah.
I think, oh, that really nails it down specifically. Growing that thicker skin is hard. I think it takes practice. I think it takes discipline. I think the best way is to go in with their eyes open and know that those negative reviews are going to come. I mean, for goodness sakes, Jennifer Weiner and Jodi Picoult get ripped apart sometimes, and so if it's going to happen to them, it's going to happen to any of us. So to go into it and just keep with a mantra in your head, that, I wrote the story I wanted to write. It won't be for everyone. And to stay true to that. And if you can have that discipline to not read the reviews, that's probably the biggest thing, to stay focused on the craft of writing and not focused on what the readers are saying about it afterwards. Because we don't, yeah. So it's just, never give up on the writing and write the book you want to write.
Well, here's another question that sprung to me right now, based on your experience with your editor and how timid you were when you were talking about, your end. What's a professional writing tip you can give to authors like myself, seasoned newbies? We always transition between new editors, and there's always that little fear of, what is she going to think of my work? So my question is, what's good professional tactics to use and employ when dealing with editors?
The word that comes to my mind immediately is compromise. Compromise, because as an author, you have this emotional work of the heart that you want it to be written the way you want to write it. But editors and publishers are in the business of selling books. They know what needs to be done to sell the books. So I think it's a give and take during the editorial process to decide what's really important, what your non-negotiables are, like the things that you want to stay true to and that you don't want to change no matter what, and then be willing to give on the other side the things that aren't as important, to be open-minded and hear why the editor is making these suggestions and try to understand how these changes can make the book better, and learning from the people that are experienced in how to sell books and what makes it the best book, and meeting in the middle on those two things. I definitely had things with my editor that the obvious things she'd point out and I'd be like, oh yeah, I don't know how I did that. You fix those right away.
Yeah.
And then there's the ones where I didn't necessarily agree. And even as a new debut author, I was able to stand up for myself and ask those questions and explain why I didn't agree with the suggestion. And I'd say at least half of the time, if not more, the editor would see my side on that. And so there were oftentimes the things I fought for stayed in the book. And then occasionally I had to let some of those things go. So definitely compromise and deciding what the non-negotiables are.
Sure. And can you tell me what you're working on now? Could you share with us?
Yes. When What's Left Untold was released, I was about 90% finished with the manuscript for book 2, which the working title right now is tentatively The Executive Club. And it's about a woman who quits her full-time job to start her own business and finds herself in dire financial straits. And a former client then dangles the opportunity for some lucrative work in an underground business. She has to decide, you know, if venturing into that business is worthwhile, given that it's going to definitely jeopardize some of the relationships that are most important to her and make her, the strength of her moral compass a little bit. So it's kind of a money versus morality kind of book. And I'm hoping to have that full manuscript complete soon, and we'll start the editing process anew.
Oh, excellent. Well, congratulations on that. That's something for us to look forward to.
Thank you. And I'd like to add too that I'm also represented by the Liza Royce Agency now. So that's been another great thing to come this year.
Exciting, exciting, exciting. So good news all around. So for all of you who are looking for that next good book to read, well, the great book is What's Left Untold. I'm sure you will enjoy it. You'll find the purchase Amazon links and the links to Sherri's website below the video. And, Sherri's very active on social media. So you'll find all those links on the website, correct? Is that right?
That's correct. And I am open for talking with book clubs. If anyone out there would like to read the book in their book club, I will meet with you virtually if that's the way to go. If you happen to be near in the Maryland Mid-Atlantic area, maybe even these days some in-person gatherings are happening, but I am definitely open to hear from book clubs that would like.
All of the book clubs who are watching, this is a book that won't just get you talking, it'll get you clubbing, because there's so many topics, as Sherri has just covered in the books, that touches all of our lives in so many different spheres and so many different aspects. And, it makes for great conversation. It's got me thinking. It even got me thinking in terms of how did she put it all together? So you know what to do. So thank you so much, Sherri. We really enjoyed having you. It was a pleasure to speak with you and to understand so much of the journey as well.
Thank you so much for having me. It was great to be here.
Thank you. And bye, everyone. We'll see you shortly again.
Okay, bye.